So there's this email going around that's worth taking a look at that asks the question, where does carbon dioxide come from? Because if we are hurtling toward this catastrophic scenario where we have to fundamentally change the way we generate energy and run our entire lives, we should probably look at the primary sources and start there. For example, if you were overweight, you don't need to look at how many calories your Coke Zero has. Maybe it's the other sources, the massive amount of carbohydrates you eat, maybe the high fructose corn syrup. Look at those major contributors to your caloric intake and cut those out first. And then as you trim down, you can look for the lesser and lesser causes. So I want to look at a letter written by a guy named Ian Plimer, who is an Australian geologist, Professor Emeritus of Earth Sciences at the University of Melbourne, a professor of mining geology, and a director of multiple mineral exploration and mining companies. He has published over 130 scientific papers, 6 books, and edited the Encyclopedia of Geology. He's also won numerous awards, the Eureka Prize in 1995 and in 2002, the Centenary Medal in 2003, and the Clark Medal in 2004. So here's what Plimer has to say. Okay, here's the bombshell. The volcanic eruption in Iceland, since its first spewing of volcanic ash, has in just 4 days negated every single effort you have made in the past 5 years to control CO2 emissions on our planet. All of you. So the Paris Climate Accord, your electric cars, everything negated by one volcano. Of course, you know about this evil CO2 that we are trying to suppress. It's that vital chemical compound that has every plant requires to live and grow and to synthesize into oxygen for us humans and all animal life. I will add, it's causing a phenomenon called global greening. I've done a video on this, where our Earth now is actually healthier than it's been at any time in the past 500 years, where you could actually go back to Christopher Columbus. And that's how much green matter we have now, because CO2 is plant food. The Earth has never been healthier. So he continues, I know it's very disheartening to realize that all of the carbon emission savings you have accomplished while suffering the inconvenience and expense of driving Prius hybrids, buying fabric grocery bags, sitting up till midnight to finish your kids' The Green Revolution science project, throwing out all of your non-green cleaning supplies, using only 2 squares of toilet paper, putting a brick in your toilet tank reservoir, selling your SUV and speedboat, and risking getting hit every day on your bicycle, replacing all of your 50-cent light bulbs with $10 light bulbs, well, all those things you have done have all gone down the tubes in just 4 days. The volcanic ash emitted into Earth's atmosphere in just 4 days, yes, 4 days, by that volcano in Iceland, which has totally erased every single effort you have made to reduce the evil beast carbon. And there are around 200 active volcanoes on the planet spewing out this crud at any one time, every day. I'd also add, look at your electric car. Where does the electricity come to charge that battery? From burning coal. It's a coal power car. Your choice is between gas power and coal power, not gas and electric. So he continues, I don't really want to rain on your parade too much, but I should mention that when the volcano Mount Pinatubo erupted in the Philippines in 1991, it spewed out more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere than the entire human race had emitted in all its years on Earth. One volcano, guys. Yes, folks, Mount Pinatubo was active for over 1 year. Think about it. Of course, I shouldn't spoil this touchy-feely tree-hugging moment and mention the effect of solar and cosmic activity and the well-recognized 800-year global heating and cooling cycle, which keeps happening despite our completely insignificant efforts to affect climate change. And I do wish I had a silver lining to this volcanic ash cloud, but the fact of the matter is that bushfire season across the western USA and Australia this year alone will negate your efforts to reduce carbon in our world for the next 2 to 3 years, and it happens every year. Just remember that your government just tried to impose a whopping carbon tax on you on the basis of the bogus human-caused climate change scenario. Hey, isn't it interesting how they don't mention global warming anymore? Or I would add global cooling, just ask Spock. But just climate change, you know why? It's because the planet has cooled by 0.7 degrees in the past century, and these global warming con artists got caught with their pants down. And just keep in mind that you might yet be stuck with an emissions trading scheme, that whopping new tax imposed on you that will achieve absolutely nothing except to make you poorer and under their control. Centralizing power in the hands of a few by using environmentalism? Destroying industry? It's not like the spotted owl was a hoax, right? It won't stop any volcanoes from erupting, that's for sure. Oh, and call me a science denier, I think not. And it's interesting, you haven't yet seen the new study that was in 2019 that was given to the UN that now expects global population to drop as low as 6.29 billion by 2100, which shatters the climate alarmist models. Because you hear like, well, science tells us that this is happening. Science tells us that climate change is real. Science is not a person. Science is not a deity on high that just hands down information. Science is a process. You do science using the scientific method, reproducible and repeatable experiments in a lab. Modeling is computer modeling. Like, look at the computer models that were used on Wall Street leading up to the 2008 housing crash. Those were models. And there was things that those models did not take into account, which was critical pieces of information. And then the whole scheme collapsed because it was like, well, we're just selling all these houses. Who are you selling the houses to? Well, 19-year-olds with no credit. And how are they going to pay those mortgages? Well, our model doesn't take that into account, right? There is so much that goes into global climate that a human constructed model can't catch. There's too much that's going to happen that they don't predict. Just think what happens. They were expecting massive population growth. They were expecting, at the high end, 12.7 billion people by 2100. That's what these climate models were using as the number of people expected to be polluting into the atmosphere. Now it could be as low as 6.29 billion. That is a huge drop. That destroys your study. And this shouldn't surprise anyone that watched Jurassic Park growing up as a kid. That's the whole idea of chaos theory. Yeah, you think you got everything tightened down. You think you've accounted for everything. And whoops, nobody counted on a Newman sabotaging the entire process, right? And then you have ideological institutional infiltration. We see this everywhere. The narrative is king. We've seen CNN with the undercover Project Veritas, where the guy admitted, yeah, we do propaganda. Now that the old coof is over, we're going to start fear-mongering with climate change because fear sells. And you can see what this guy is mocking in the letter is kind of the environmentalist culture. Like, people are looking to do good in the world. They're chasing that good feeling. And if you're like, well, I put a brick in my toilet, it's this one-upsmanship of this game. It's a silly game. Like, I'm doing more to save the earth than you are. The biggest environmentalist I ever met was a girl I knew in college who would always go to Dave Matthews Band concerts, and she recycled gum wrappers because there's the little metal foil on the outside, and that's how she one-upped everyone. Of course, she also smoked cigarettes, and we won't talk about the environmental impact of tobacco farmings, but then if people really understood reality, it would seriously cut into the profits of these virtue merchants.